Well, I can get started while Sarah brings the presentation up. So we want to thank you all for having us on your agenda tonight. My name is John Brockelman. I head up marketing for State Street Global Advisors, and I'm joined tonight by my colleague Sarah Locklear, who heads up brand and has been leading our Fearless Girl campaign for the last several years. And we're here tonight to seek a permit extension for Fearless Girl's current location at the New York Stock Exchange and on Broad Street. Just to give you a little background on State Street Global Advisors, we are the fourth largest asset manager in the world. We work with institutions globally to help millions of people save for retirement. We work with endowments and foundations to help them invest in things like environmental and scientific breakthroughs, and we work with financial advisors who help people invest their life savings. So just to step back a little bit and rewind the tape a little bit to 2017 and how Fearless Girl came to be. We as an asset manager had been looking at a variety of different studies that had shown that companies that have a higher percentage of women in senior leadership, and in particular at the board level, tended to outperform. But regardless of that fact, we had seen, in particular in the US, 1 out of every 4 public companies still had all male boards. And so we were prepared as one of the largest shareholders out there to issue guidance to those companies we invest in, saying that we expected them to take action to create greater diversity, in particular on their boards. Because previously these studies had not gotten a ton of attention and scant press coverage. And so we had created Fearless Girl to help draw broader attention to this issue, and originally had placed her at Bowling Green opposite Charging Bull. Now, we were hoping that Fearless Girl would get some attention to this campaign we were prepared to launch. We certainly were not expecting to have 1 billion impressions on Twitter alone in the first 12 hours. And to give you a sense of the campaign at the time, we originally only had a permit for Fearless Girl at Bowling Green for 7 days. But obviously the overwhelming response from the public worldwide and in New York was a desire to keep Fearless Girl in New York City. Just to share with you, we're now 4 years into our Fearless Girl campaign, and looking at the companies that we had identified. Over 1,500 companies at the time did not have a single woman on their board. And as a result of this campaign, 4+ years later, 862 companies have now added at least 1 female director. There's certainly more to do, but this campaign is definitely drawn attention to this issue, and it's had a big impact, and we've been proud to be part of it. So I'm going to hand things to Sarah to get into the particulars, in particular regarding Fearless Girl's move from Bowling Green to her current location at the New York Stock Exchange. So Sarah, maybe you could take it from here.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, John. As John was saying, we were really blown away with the response that we received to Fearless Girl. There was actually a change.org petition created by the public to try to keep her in New York City. So, we worked really closely with the mayor's office and other city agencies and organizations to try to find a home for her. And in December 2018, we reinstalled Fearless Girl in her current location, shown here, opposite the New York Stock Exchange on Broad Street. And again, this relocation was really met with overwhelmingly positive media and public attention. So on this next slide, we're just so we're all clear about where we're talking about. This shows where Fearless Girl is placed, right across from that kind of iconic facade of the Stock Exchange building. And again, on this slide, we are showing the street plan view of her current placement. We also wanted to show a few photos of how the street looked before Fearless Girl was placed on the left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side, you can see, where she is located and how she fits into the current street view. So when we were considering her reinstallation in 2018, we wanted to be really thoughtful about the space and her placement. So we wanted to make sure that the location was somewhere that was pedestrian friendly. So Broad Street was really a great option because it's a wide street and there's no vehicle traffic. So it's definitely a safe place to have people come by and look at the statue. We were also very careful about where we placed her on the street. So she's far enough away from the curb to allow for accessibility, and she's also far enough away from the New York Stock Exchange fence. So emergency vehicles are still able to pass through if needed. We're very committed to her cleaning and maintenance. We have a crew that comes in once or twice a month to work on the statue and keep that up. And we continue to have a great relationship with the Stock Exchange, really kind of across our business, but specifically with Fearless Girl, we often partner with the Stock Exchange on our gender diversity on corporate boards campaigns. They're a really great partner and thought leader in this space as well. And we feel that our placement across from the Stock Exchange just sends a really important and inspirational message. We wanted to include some information here about a approved seating plan project. So this actually is not an initiative that has anything to do with State Street, but our LPC contact, Dina Winter, suggested that we included this here for reference, really. But you may recall in late 2019, early 2020, this was presented to you to create some seating that would actually frame Fearless Girl on Broad Street. So again, this isn't an initiative that we are working on or we're even aware of, but we have learned from Dina that no work has begun on this yet, but you have seen some other initiatives to do with Fearless Girl somewhat recently. It also really, as a reference, we wanted to include the technical drawing from the original installation in 2018. We worked very carefully to make sure she had a really secure and stable platform on the street. And at this time, we're not asking for or recommending any additional work be done to the statue and her placement. But again, this is really just for reference of what was done a few years ago when she was originally placed on Broad Street. So with that, John, I'll pass it back to you just to talk more about our ask today and why we're here.
Sure, I think it's fairly straightforward. We intend to continue to lead this campaign and continue to make an impact on boards across the globe. We think the Fearless Girl campaign has been critically important to helping us get real results from that perspective. And our specific ask is in bold there, that the statue will stay in place. As Sarah just mentioned, we're not seeking to do any additional paving or alterations at this time. And we're really asking for your approval to keep the statue in place for as long as possible, so we don't have to keep doing kind of on a yearly basis extensions each year, which we have been doing for the last several years.
Thank you both. I guess I'll start with a couple questions. What was the thought when it was originally placed there in terms of it being done, without any sort of permitting? Were you guys involved? Was it done with the anchoring that we see there now, and was it just placed on top? Like, can you just tell us a little bit more about that? And then also, you say you'd like it to stay in place for as long as possible. What kind of direction are you getting from landmarks as to the law of how long your permit could be? What kind of permit are we talking about here? Is this like a certificate of appropriateness or a letter of some other type of thing? Those are my questions. And then I guess everybody else should go.
Sure, maybe I could cover a couple of them, and maybe Sarah, I could go to you on kind of the anchoring, and we could go back to that image. She has been under a permit since she's been there for the last 4+ years. When she was originally installed at Bowling Green, it was considered a street permit, and that was something that was done through the DOT. And then we were able to work with the DOT through their arts program to extend her stay. We've essentially exhausted those permit extensions for the time being. And so this is why we have to undertake this process to come to this board, as well as work with the LPC to keep her for a more permanent time period. Sarah, I don't know if you can speak to, I think there was a lot of care that was put into the actual placement, specifically the cobblestones, and making sure that those were in place and that she fit in with the street. But maybe Sarah, you could hit a few of those.
Yeah. I mean, John said it pretty clearly here, but we did work with a mason and made sure that the statue was very securely placed on the street itself. And again, as we said, we're not looking to change any of the way that she's placed in her current location. I did want to answer part of your question though about what we were asking for within this meeting today. So our LPC contact recommended that, you know, we come and ask for more permanency in her location here. So we're looking for your approval to keep her here as long as, you know, is possible from your end, just so we don't have to come back and get these annual renewals. That's how she directed us to come to this group and speak to you all tonight.
Tane,
Happy to answer any other questions on that.
Who agrees to maintain the statue, like as long as it's there?
We have agreements in place to maintain the statue. As I mentioned, we do have a cleaning and maintenance crew that comes, but you know, the statue is something that we are committed to maintaining.
Okay. All right. So whoever wants to speak from the committee, go ahead now.
Yeah, Jason, I have one question. So who's spearheading the bench relocation and the additional, are there additional benches being put in? Is that what I'm understanding?
If that question is directed at us, you know, we are actually not involved in that project, so we really couldn't speak to the details of it. But maybe if I'm not sure if there's anyone on from the LPC. I'm not sure if Dina's on. She could probably give you more information about that.
Well, we've supported the
we're
bench.
Not involved in that.
Yeah, we
Jennifer
supported
said,
that bench.
Did you dial in? She has a phone. She sees a cell number, or are you trying to go in via?
I'm coming up as RV and it says the host is rejected.
Oh, Roger would know who's putting forward
You
the
dialed
bench proposal, Gerald, maybe. Just, I know we supported that when it came to us
Right, so
generally.
you're not on the phone.
And I think that you guys said
No,
it
I
wasn't
know.
built yet. Is that right? Does everyone know that? I don't
Yes,
know.
it's not built. I
All right,
walked
so-
by there today, just before coming to the meeting. It's not, nothing's in place. They haven't done anything.
Okay, so maybe Roger will help us answer that question, Gerald, when he jumps on. Any other questions, concerns?
No,
No, you love it?
I like it. I think it's fine. They do a good job. People love to come by it. I think it's better than at Bowling Green, and I'm all for it. The end.
It's a good
And I
campaign.
will say here, this is Liz. I completely agree. I think it's fabulous. Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public here about this item?
Jason, there is a member, Todd Fine, who wishes to speak on this.
Todd, fine. I know Todd, right. Let's hear what he has to say if everyone's done from the committee.
Yes, hello, you can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. First thing I would like to mention that it was announced recently that State Street is leaving New York City. So they're not exactly the best host of this statue. They've, I guess, removed a lot of jobs from the city. And they've exited their headquarters from the city. But I'd like to point out that if they, throughout their presentation, they keep talking about this as a campaign. And it's very revealing that they talk about this as an advertising campaign and not as public art in New York City. They want to, what they're saying, make an advertising campaign permanent on a permanent basis. I don't think there's ever a precedent for a permanent advertising campaign on city streets in dialogue with the historic building that's the landmark. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but this is a very important step. I think it needs to be treated with a lot more scrutiny and review. And we don't want our city, I don't think we want New York City to become, the streets of New York City to become permanent places of advertisements for corporations. It's an evolution beyond the bid model where it's just a management to an actual repurposing of the public space for private gain as billboard. And it's a very worrisome precedent, and it should not be made permanent. The year review, I think, is much more appropriate because we really need to scrutinize the political implications more seriously. Additionally, it is not a public art. It's really not a statue. It is a gimmick, and it is part of New York City's continued devolution into gimmickry and attractions as being a public space rather than serious artworks that go through a public design process, which is actually the process that is intended for public arts. And the illustration of it being a gimmick is one way is to show that is that they continually put things like clothing. They recently put the Salvation Army on clothing on Fearless Girl or glass around Fearless Girl. They don't treat it as if it's actual a monument that deserves permanent authorization in the city. They treat it as an advertising corporate landscape for them to do what they will. Additionally, I think it needs to be reviewed by the Design Commission at some point as a permanent place of art. You know, we're already seeing how that has had other issues if it's not allowed in other places. There's no reason to just totally disrespect that existing procedure for public art. And even if we like it, I mean, I could tell some of the commissioner, some of the members of the committee like the artwork, think it should remain. There is a process for that. So there's really no reason to pass a resolution to discourage them from doing that process, especially if it goes on indefinitely. There's got to be a threshold, and at least any resolution needs to make clear what that threshold is for it to become a permanent part of the city. Also, and one of the reasons that's so important is because the artwork does need scrutiny according to New York standards of public art. There are many significant, well-written critiques by art experts, art historians, who say this is really not a high-quality sculpture worthy of the New York City public collection. It has a very incoherent meaning. I mean, the fact that it's being moved around, at one point it's challenging the bull, now it's challenging the New York Stock Exchange, it's conceded as an advertising campaign. It's a very incoherent statement. It's basically, in some ways, it's stating, it's not really, I mean, I can't see the statement about board members. That's something you could only learn if you did further research. I mean, if we're honest about it, it's to advance the profile of State Street Financial. They don't have any sort of monopoly on it. And it's an incoherent critique of the stock exchange itself, whether they are, I don't need to, I guess I'll finish it. I don't need to critique the statue, but there are most art experts, most do not consider this a work of art worthy of New York. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, people like it, yes, but in terms of public art collection, anyway, that's a decision for the Public Design Commission. There's a process. I'll shut up. Thank you.
How is it that you guys were able to not do this public art process that normally statues have to take?
I'm sorry, what the question again?
Typically works that kind of fall in this jurisdiction that Todd was describing, they follow a different course than, let's say, a modification to a building or something, putting something in a historic district. It's called some sort of public art review process, and I'm not so familiar with it, but I was just wondering, how is it that you ended up going on this trajectory of approval versus what the standard that we see is typically through the public design committee or commission or whoever that is?
So, I mean, we really took guidance from the city. As I mentioned before, the original permit was a 7-day street permit, and then with the overwhelming response, there was a desire to keep her longer at Bowling Green, and the option that was presented to us was the DOT Arts Program, which I believe is a 3+ year program where we were re-upping extension after extension on an annual basis. So we took the guidance from the mayor's office and the DOT in particular that we were working with through that program.
And I'd like to add that only corporations would ever get that status. Sorry to interject, but no private public group could ever get that type of treatment.
Jason, when they're finished.
No, go ahead.
Oh, so I just want to thank Todd for that brief introduction, which I think was spot on. And I definitely agree with what you're saying. I'm sorry, I understand, what the crowds do, but, they're not exactly the ultimate arbiter of taste. I think that, if indeed it is an advertising campaign, you really should have told us about that. Like, let's not mix, as he says, monuments and art with private corporate campaigns and then litter our streets. And I will offer my vote for an annual review rather than a permanent position.
I appreciate that perspective. I just want to add that we've been very upfront and spoken very publicly and through our whole permitting process about what the point has been behind the Fearless Girl statue, and in particular, the guidance that we were directing to the companies that we invest in, that we wanted to see more gender diversity at the board level because it does drive overall performance of those companies. So we've been whether it was the original installation, whether it was the reinstallation on 2018, and we've celebrated on International Women's Day her placement every single year, and we've done a report out on the impact each year of the companies that we originally identified, and then ultimately the companies that have moved diversity forward on their boards. We put press releases out on that, so we've been very vocal about what the campaign is all about and the purpose behind it.
May I just ask, just out of curiosity, how did you decide on this age for this statue? How did the representation of practically an infant relates and inspires adult women?
Yeah, so that was something that we talked through during the campaign, and we really felt by having a strong, confident young girl would not only inspire the leaders of today, but inspire future generations. And what's been really great about this campaign is that we've had tons and tons of young girls come down to the statue and do the pose and have that bold and confident pose and be inspired by that component of the campaign. So that's really the reason behind it.
I would just like to add that one problem with this idea that the campaign is just for women on boards is that previous to the statue's installation, State Street had settled a lawsuit about pay discrimination against women in its own company. So this was also patently a attempt to repair its own reputation on gender that had been already harmed.
Who is the artist?
It's an artist by the name of Kristen Visbal.
American?
Yes.
Been spoken out about this at all publicly?
Has Kristen?
Yeah, has she come to any of these meetings and to speak in favor of her amazing work? How does she spell her last name?
It's Visbal.
Oh.
Visbal.
Okay.
She's actually been, sorry to interject, but I have some knowledge on this. She's actually been in a legal dispute with the company because she claims some sort of rights to the statue and its design. It was not compensated very much at all, apparently a quite paltry amount, yet State Street claims full copyright and is preventing her reproduction of the sculpture. So she may not even necessarily support this.
I'm sorry, is this true?
I can't get into kind of current, legal situation regarding the artist. I can say that she was originally at the installation and has had public statements regarding the movement of the statue to the New York Stock Exchange in support. She was in the mayor's press release when the announcement went, when she was originally moving from Bowling Green to the New York Stock Exchange.
Okay, and then somewhere in there, the relationship soured. So we don't need to know the exact details of a lawsuit, but wish you had brought this up, because if Todd wasn't here, we wouldn't, people like me would be unaware. So thank you again, Todd. Jason, I would really like to propose a vote for a temporary spot, 1 day less a year.
Another question. I'm
Just
sorry
a
for all the
moment.
questions. Who's the applicant?
Jason, hold on 1 second. Roger Byram is on the phone. He's having a hard time logging. So would you like that question answered, or would you like Roger to speak from my phone? I'm sorry.
Hear who the applicant is, because I'm taking notes.
It's State Street Global
Okay,
Advisors.
State Street is the applicant. And Sarah's from where? Sarah
I
represents.
work at State Street as well.
Oh, great. Okay, so it's simple. State Street. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yes.
go,
Yeah.
Roger.
Okay, Roger, go ahead.
Yeah, just as a long-time member of community board and landmarks chair to recently, this has been quite a contentious issue from day one. When it was installed at Bowling Green, it was not done through anything other than a bit of a cheeky campaign. So I do agree that the appropriate approvals are to renew it just for a limited period of time. We had a similar issue, those of us may remember, with the Woolworth building, where advertisers were seeking to use the sheds around the Woolworth building for advertising. And there was no really ruling on that. We had to fight very hard to get LPC to point out that we should be using landmarks buildings or landmark districts to be promoting things that are commercially viable for commercial reasons. So I would support renewing it for 1 year, but I do think it's not appropriate to turn this into a permanent installation. Thank you.
Thanks.
I second Vicky's motion. I think Todd's information was very useful.
Before we do any motion, did we have a motion there? I didn't hear a motion.
But
Okay,
Vicky
so-
made something.
I
But go
made
on.
a
Okay,
motion.
don't motion anything quite yet, because
Okay.
I want to say I would be disappointed if we let this move forward really at all, if we didn't get official word that it should not be going through the Public Design Commission. It seems from what little I read on the header of their website, this seems to be under their jurisdiction, and I don't see why, because someone got advice from some mayor or mayor's helper, that we should go to landmarks with this, and then landmarks fumbles around with it, doesn't know what to do with it, that it should circumvent any part of the approval process that might be required by the city charter. So I don't know, but from what I gleaned from the website, it seems like this would be an appropriate thing for their review. I think we should get further insight on that from someone who knows about city policies, and then maybe we could wholeheartedly support it through the right process and make sure that the process is right, that we're being subjecting this installation to. I'm not sure who agrees about that, but
I do.
I agree with
No.
that,
I
Jason.
agree with that. I agree as
So-
well.
So, I think that kind of avoids us saying whether we like the sculpture or think it's the right spot, and maybe punts it a little bit to just make sure that everyone knows that that there's a hearing about this even, or whatever. They may have some other policies for public notice, and we have very little policy of public notice right now at the Community Board 1. It's just simply posted on the internet, and then you're meant to meet people on the internet. I certainly don't have a great, I guess, litmus test for what people in the community do like or don't like about it. I I don't know. I'm curious. We only have Todd that came out in opposition of it, and
Jason, you
you
have
know.
one more hand up, at least
Oh,
from what I
yeah,
can
go
see in
ahead.
the
Go ahead.
participants
Oh,
on
great.
attendees. I think you have to
So,
let that person speak.
all right, so let's
Hello.
get that person in there.
Hi, everyone. This is
Victoria.
Victoria Hillstrom. Hi. I am also here to object for the very same reasons that Todd Fine has indicated. There is a process for approval. I take offense that a company is using our streets to forward their agenda. I would much rather see an entire women board. I also take extreme offense that the artist has had to involve themselves in litigation and they neglected to mention such a thing. I think it's very disrespectful to the arts, to the community, and it seems that they kind of just push this in there, and it really requires the proper process. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Victoria. And I want to be clear, I'm not really against it or for it. I'm really for it following the process. Not knowing the process, I'd like to make sure that it's being followed correctly. And I would like, yeah, go ahead.
If you'd like, I could read the section of the city charter related to more than 1 year, why this is coming up. So in city charter chapter 37, it says, designs for all works of art or structures intended for temporary use in a fixed location during a period of more than 1 year shall be subject to the same forms of procedure as those adopted for permanent use. But the approval of such design shall be for a period determined by the commission not to exceed 3 years, after which this commission shall either extend the period or order the removal of the work or art or sculpture. So if that may be why they'd have to do it less than 1 year. So I don't quite understand how landmarks could approve it for more than 1 year, because that would, according to the city charter, would need to go to the design commission. So maybe they're saying that it becomes part of the stock exchange itself, part of the building. Is that the rationale, and not under design commission approval? That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, well, we shouldn't be put on the spot to determine that. That's not our role here. And so seeing that the statue is already concreted into the ground, you know, the applicant has nothing to worry about it being removed in the time period when we are going to be doing some diligence to make sure that it followed the right procedure, even though, you know, this is technically, while we're being asked for an extension of a permit, the origination of the permit is actually, quite frankly, a legalization of what was put there without permit. So I mean, it sounds like that because, well, okay, let me ask this question of the applicant. Is there a previously approved landmarks permit for the existing location that is now expiring?
I don't know if it's a landmarks permit. Sarah, do you have the exact definition of what the current permit is, which is through the end of November?
Yes, we have a current LPC permit that expires, yes, at the end of November of this year, and they guided us to come here as our next step. So that's the process that we had been following, because that was the guidance that we had received up until this point.
We have a public hearing for that initial permit.
I know that we have a public hearing in this November for the renewal of the permit, but John, sorry, I'm not sure if I could speak to what happened in 2018.
No, I don't know.
I believe there was no
I
hearing.
don't know what the process was. We were just guided by the LPC, and as Sarah said, you know, we're happy to follow whatever process we should be following. This is the guidance that we've received from the LPC, that this is the process we should follow, given that the permit is going to be coming to an end at the end of November.
Well, I guess just for, I'd like to see a copy of the permit.
Okay.
And then I'd like to have Jennifer research with landmarks how the permit was gotten. And then we can, yes, go ahead, Vicky.
Roger Byram is saying that there was no public hearing, that they came to us originally when they wanted to move from Bowling Green to this current location, and a permit was granted for 1 year, and that was it. Now they're just here, for extensions.
I'm sorry. So there was a permit granted and it was a public hearing and we were,
Hearing. There was no public hearing. They just came to us asking if they can relocate from Bowling Green.
I think it was.
well, that,
Can you hear Roger?
I believe in 2018, the permit was a 3-year it was a permit that could be extended on an annual basis for up to 3 years. And so we followed whatever that process was back in 2018 to get to the reinstallation at the New York Stock Exchange. Now we've exhausted that permitting process. And so we're going through this permitting process.
Yeah.
okay. So I just have a question that I couldn't weigh in on whether I'm in favor of this or not until it's answered, and you might not know it tonight. And I'm not going to go off of Roger's secondary phone call information. The question is simply, did you have to go to a public hearing to get a permit for the statue where it stands right now? It's very simple. It's either a yes or no question to be answered, and you might not know the answer right now. It's not, did we come to us or did we?
I don't know if the agency went to a public hearing. I certainly did not participate in a public hearing at the time. There may have been a public hearing that the LPC brought it to without our, testifying to it, but I was not involved in that. I would have known if someone else at State Street was involved in a public hearing. So we weren't at the time, but maybe the LPC was.
Okay, well, I need yeah, okay, so it's okay that you weren't involved. I still have the question I still want to understand is whether in October of 2018, there was a public hearing at the LPC offices where someone presented this for the public to weigh in on. And if the answer is no, in my case, I have a big problem with extending such permit. Okay. So
Jason,
go.
Roger is speaking again. This is go ahead, Roger.
They did come to Landmarks Committee, Jason, in 2018. I recall the meeting, and we agreed to a temporary installation of 1 year. My understanding then was it went to LPC at staff level and was granted the 1 year, 1 year, 1 year. So I think they're in compliance, but the issue is that they're running out of options because they're asking for a permanent structure when they haven't gone through what now is the required process.
I guess my point is, my feeling is the process is flawed from the beginning with that way of doing it, and it should have just gone to a big old public hearing process then, like we do for people changing scuppers on old buildings if they have to, and it shouldn't have been circumvented. So because I just have this kind of strong feeling that the public, not me and us 8 people, I barely visit this area. I know, Roger, you're very familiar with it. I want to hear more about what other people have to say about it. And if you don't go to public hearings and you don't give notification to communities in that manner, then you get less action from the public. And you get just 2 people, Todd and Vicky, saying they don't like it. And so it's not the applicant's fault and it's not the fault of anybody, but for me, it just brings me back to having a problem extending it for any amount of time. I can get behind, if the group wants to like rally behind a mini extension here, I'm all for that too. I could vote that way, but it's like, why are we doing that? It's concreted into the ground. Let's make sure that this is being done and setting a precedent, to Todd's point, for how these things are set and concreted into the grounds of our public streets.
Yeah, I'd like to add that it's not only just about a public hearing, it's that the Public Design Commission has art experts that review public art. That is their purpose, and they're supposed to review public art that's placed for more than 1 year. So it's not even just that the public get to opine. They might be able to opine in some, squirrely LPC meeting, we don't know, but this process for public art more than 1 year is very explicitly the Public Design Commission. And it sounds like they don't even know if that's going to be part of this.
Well, so yeah, and that's back to my original point, which is like, I don't want to, I'm personally not willing to weigh in unless someone gives me absolute clarity by way of, you know, Jennifer or whoever at CB1 can get this information, how it is that someone interpreted the law to say they didn't have to go to the Public Design Commission. So I can understand that interpretation, and maybe I'm hope to agree with it, but it seems like some step was not followed here. So I'd like to just punt on it, and, you know, like I said, it's cemented in the ground. So, you know, the applicant gets what they want while it's being laid over. Let's get more information. You know, I guess I could work with Jennifer on that. Sure, it doesn't take a lot of time to just make sure that we know that the process is being followed the right way, and then have them back through that process. And you know what, if nothing changes from what I saw presented tonight, and I then know that the process was followed the right way, I will vote in favor of this and write a resolution in that way.
One thing we can look at on our end, I don't remember it, but there's a chance that as part of that, our agency might have represented us at some kind of public hearing. I don't know the answer to that. We can certainly get that.
Terrific. If behind the scenes, you know, you guys did follow that process. That's why I don't want, you know, it's like, it's hearsay to say that you didn't follow it. Maybe you did, but you're here today for a landmarks permit, and the question's coming up, where's your Public Design Commission permit? And so we just want to make sure that everything's, you know, on the up and up with, you know, just out of no fault of your own. Just like you maybe got bad advice, the city loved the statue, they moved you along. Let's give you a shot and make sure that you did everything you're supposed to do, and then I can support it fully. And that's just my opinion. Like I said, if everybody else at this table wants to go ahead and grant the extension right now and have me write a resolution, I can get behind that too. I'm not trying to impose my personal feelings about it.
Jason, may I speak?
Yes.
Thank you. No, I completely agree with what you're proposing. Only my initial reaction was just, if they're here and this is what we have to vote on, then a temporary extension would have been my choice rather than a permanent one. But if this venue that you just proposed is more palatable, and I'm in complete compliance with, agreement with you. Gerald, you have an opinion?
Well, yeah, I'm sitting here thinking about everything that's been said tonight. I'm on Broad Street probably once, twice a week at least. It's completely congested now. We've sat in other meetings on this community board discussing the takeover, the privatization of public space. The open streets, open restaurants able down through Broad Street is as bad as it is anywhere else in terms of the expanse of the public space being taken over for private enterprise, and so, you know, based off of that, I mean, I love the campaign of you know, more diversity in boards across the U.S. And it's I'm sure a phenomenal crowd pleaser for New York City in particular, but you know, on the notion of the public space, I mean, I would agree with the committee here that, you know, there is a process in place, and it should go through the process like every other piece of public art. Yet this isn't really public art, is it? So, you know, is it going to be donated to the city at some point? Is that, I don't know. I mean, if I were to make a motion right now, it would be to shelve this and get more information.
Yeah. Well said.
I hate to ask, I'm going to ask one more question and hope that everyone agrees to shelve it, and that is to the point of, you know, is State Street, aren't you guys putting forward as the applicant that this is public art? This isn't some you would say if someone asks you, what is this? This is a statue. It's public art. Is that right? Am I putting words in your mouth?
No, you're not putting words in our mouth.
Okay, good.
In our mouth.
Okay,
I
good.
believe it's public.
Okay, great. All right. I think. Go ahead.
I mean, I just also want to say though that I did not know that there were clothes being put on the piece of art, that other things were happening to it. I think looking into, you know, who owns the bull, how is that being handled, how was it handled, and going forward, I mean, obviously, shelving this for right now until we have more information, but those are some other questions that I would have is how are other pieces of artwork across the city being handled? And then if we ever get to a resolution that obviously that you know, the art is art and it's not, I'm so sorry, when I heard that somebody was putting clothes on it, I immediately was triggered with a reminder of a family member who lives in a rural suburban community, and one of the neighbors has a plastic duck out front that changes clothes every day. I'm like, oh my God, I hope that's not what's happening on Wall Street. So that's all I have to say about it.
Maybe I could just quickly address that. So because she's has become so iconic, there are people who've put different types of clothing on her. We can't control what something that happens to other statues as well.
Yep.
What we've generally done is celebrate Fearless Girl on her anniversary and release the latest numbers. And we have done some installations around Fearless Girl where we've gotten a permit. For example, this last celebration, we did have kind of a mock of broken glass, talking about kind of the shattered glass ceilings that have happened since Fearless Girl was originally placed. That was a very temporary 48-hour installation to draw attention to the issue.
Sorry.
You said it was $1 billion within the first 24 hours, $1 billion on Instagram. Is that correct?
No, in the first, and there's some data, I believe, in the appendix in terms of the overall response to Fearless Girl, but over 1 billion impressions in the first 12 hours, hundreds of millions of views on Instagram.
What is the Instagram page?
We don't have an Instagram page. This was just people
the hashtag
taking photos of her, or sharing the content and her message during the campaign, or after the installation, and just organically someone created a change.org petition to make her more permanent. That happened in 2017. That was something that was just done by the public. It wasn't done by us, and I think got close to 60,000 signatures online to support it. Yeah, there's an image of it right there.
I just want to interrupt because we have another person who's raised their hand from the public. And then, John, I want you to think about the answer to this question while this person's talking. Are you going to be okay and work with us if we delay you on your hearing to renew the permit, in light of the fact that this thing isn't going to move, physically, if we kick it down a month? But who's this next person who wants to talk?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and unmute them. So call in user 5, start with the number 212229. Can you please identify?
Yeah, hi, it's Roger. I'm struggling to participate in the meeting. I mean, I think we can all agree that this has been a tremendously successful campaign. And that's not the issue here, I don't think. I think the issue here is that our remit is to think about what's appropriate in our historic districts, and this was brought to us in a sort of backdoor way. I agree with what everyone's saying, Todd and Jason and Vicky and Susan, that it needs to now go through the public process. But I think we would be egregious to suggest that we shouldn't give some extension to give time for this process to happen. And if the permit runs out in November, that's a month away. So I do think we should be collaborative and give an extension of 6 or more months rather than 1. because it's a complicated matter. Otherwise, we may end up with a lot of people saying we're being too focused on the wrong things. Thank you.
I also want, excuse me, I'm sorry to interject, but I wanted to correct that the close on the statue occurred to a campaign that was done with Salvation Army in December of 2020. They can correct if that occurred or not.
All right. Well,
So, so in answer to, I believe it was Jason's question.
yes.
And I agree with Roger. Given I don't know, and we're not familiar with the process. Obviously, we're not involved in public art to this extent. So this is a new process for us. It has been a new process for us every time. It wasn't something we were expecting. I think if the board would feel comfortable giving us an extension, if it could be up to a year to allow whatever process needs to play out, I think that would be extremely helpful, especially if you're talking about another. We certainly want to follow whatever the right process is, and we've been seeking guidance from the city for that. So we're happy to follow whatever process is appropriate. The point is, though, that the permit does expire at the end of November, and it would be helpful if this process can't be wrapped up and these other hearings can't be wrapped up by the end of November, then we have an issue with no permit.
Okay, can I just tell you my problem with that? I appreciate what, and I think, again, I can get behind something like that. But the problem with that is the way the process works for us is we're going to write a resolution. Landmarks Commission, they're going to take that resolution, carefully crumple it up, throw it in a wastebasket. You're going to go to public hearing. The commissioners are all going to stop sketching for 5 minutes and give their opinion. And they're going to say, you know what, let's extend it for 4 years. And we didn't have any say, because that's how the process works. So that's my fear of giving an extension. If anyone else disagrees with that and thinks that the process is probably going to go differently, and there's a way to get on the desk of the commissioner or Caroline King Levy and say, listen, guys, we're serious. We want a very mini extension, so that everyone can check and see that the proper process was filed. I just don't know if we'll get that going Roger and John's way, but I want to do this and act as a committee. I'm just interjecting my, experience at the commission level and how things run with our resolutions. So are we going to go with Roger's way, a mini extension?
No, I think we should stick to what you and I are discussing.
Well, then let's take a straw poll.
Yeah, exactly.
So how can we do that?
Do that. Before you do that, Jason, just one comment to John about this statute. Now, speaking as a woman professional, not as necessarily a member of the community board, there are a couple of things. When art is meant to be a public art concept, that comes with a lot of design responsibility that was not thought of in here. We don't make a statue that is 3 feet high, plonk it on the ground, don't have any kind of roping or a plinth for it. That's why we have public art, that when it is public, it has a great message, and it's designed to implement that message. So your intent or lack thereof design experience is evident here in this little statue, and then you wonder why people put clothing on it. I also want to say, as a mature professional woman, I have no idea for the life of me why you are using to represent me and all the other women a little tiny child. Okay, this is not a teenager, this is not a young woman, this is not a 35-year-old professional. But speaking as a woman, I cannot believe that you allowed yourself to do something like this on our behalf, and then try not to make it a public art. So as I said, I'm speaking as a professional woman. I see what the purpose is, but I'm sorry that it's gone about this way. Anyway, Jason, I'm done on this. We should move on. We have 4 hours.
Close this out because I feel like John and Sarah have been really good sports and we've heard a lot about this already. So let's do a straw poll. I can't see how many people we have on here. I want to go last. Vicky, you're a give them you're a punt it. You want to punt, right?
Yes, I want to go
Okay.
your way. I want a hearing.
Sarah.
I
Gerald, what do you want?
I'm sorry, I was muted. I'm with Vicky on this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chow?
Same.
Okay. I got Liz next.
Yeah, I would, excuse me, I would go with Roger on the mini extension.
Okay, and then we have Megan.
I'm with Vicky's suggestion.
Okay, so that's looking like 3-2. I'm not quite. Susan?
I'll go with Vicky and you.
Okay, so 4. Vera, you're the 1. Silence means up.
I'm laughing. I was laughing. I said, what if I told you I can go either way?
That's fine, because you still were. I think that still puts us one more in the punting direction. So, okay. So I'm gonna say I don't think we can write a resolution in favor, but I am gonna make a promise to John and Sarah, and that is, could we not, like, in the next 4 days, business days, run together to find out maybe in fact that all the processes were followed the right way, having to do with design commission? That would move me a lot more to the other direction, maybe it's not such a postponement. Maybe by next month we can get the material together that kind of sheds this into a little bit of a different light, and just do an expedited punting of this. And I guess I really don't. For me, I think punting doesn't necessarily, it doesn't hurt you guys at all, because you're just going to not be in compliance with a statute that's concrete in the ground. So I would write a letter to LPC and we should say, please don't come and take the statue out of the ground. That's not what we're saying. So the way that cities do irrational things, they're not going to do that anyway. And let's work with you guys to just make sure that you covered all the bases. And if we find out that it should have gone through the design commission, then you guys are going to race. It's incumbent on you to race to the design commission and put it through that process. And we'll be ready to hear it right away. Seems like you have the material already. I just don't see it as such a delay. And I also don't see it as us voicing opposition necessarily to it. Okay, so it's a.
So just to be clear, so we will chase down with the LPC exactly the process that was followed back in 2018. And the only other thing that I'm hearing is a concern related to, and I'm not familiar with the design process, but is that something that we should? Are those the only 2 items, and that we can follow up with the LPC on?
For me, I think yes.
So
For me,
are those
I think
the only,
yes.
those the only 2?
That
Okay.
gives me a lot, that makes me feel a lot better. Like, ideally you get a letter or correspondence from the Public Design Commission saying, this is not in our jurisdiction. I'm just saying that would be like the easy, clean thing. And then LPC, a comment about just why they felt like, even though you guys came to us, maybe voluntarily, why they felt or confirmed that there wasn't a landmarks public hearing with the commission, why they felt that wasn't necessary. And maybe then they have a great, citation of the law that cleans it all up and shuts me up, and then we just move on to, a favorable resolution.
Yeah, so it would be great to facilitate a conversation with you and the LPC about what their process was in 2018, because you both certainly know far more than we do about the process. We're just trying to follow the right rules here.
Sorry, if I could interject, I would just like to say, John, this is Victoria, that it is not, we love that you are invested in this statue and supporting the arts. I think that many of our issues are with LPC and that they really not regarded our landmarks, that we're more concerned with how the city is handling things, having nothing to do with your statue, or it really is just more how the Landmark Preservation Commission is glossing over some very important buildings in the city, having less to do with your statue. So I didn't want you to think that I don't appreciate the notion that you feel that this is an important statement. It really is really more directed
we
towards the Landmark Preservation Commission.
we appreciate that comment. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Second that. Okay, so let's move on. I don't know formally, what are we doing? We're writing a resolution that says, please get back to us on these two things that John outlined, and then we'll give our ruling. Is that how we're going to work for a resolution for the committee?
I think so.
Okay, so this call to question.
Second.
Okay,
you.
all.
Oh, Jason, you want to go ahead and or try to go to a roll call vote, whichever way.
Yeah, let's do a roll call vote. So,
Yeah, Jason.
I'm a yes for the resolution.
Right. Okay. And Vicky.
Yes.
Okay. Mark is not here. Susan.
Yes.
Bruce is not here. Liz.
Yes.
Gerald.
Yes.
Megan.
Yes.
Vera.
Yes.
Chow.
Yes.
Okay, and Roger.
Yes.
Okay. With all the votes in, the motion passes.
All right, who do we have next? Who's